Good morning, boys and girls. This is your math e-learning lesson for Monday, May 4th. Today we're going to be working on lesson 129, chance and probability. I'd like you now to make sure you have your book open to lesson 129 because I want us to read together what it says here, please. Looking at just below the box, okay, lesson 129, chance and probability. When a meteorologist states that the chance of rain is 80%, then the prediction is that it will probably rain. If the chance of rain is 20%, then the meteorologist means that it might rain, but it probably will not. Meteorologists use percentages to describe the chance or the likelihood of rain. Let's just stop there for a minute. Okay, first off, meteorologists. Okay, a person who tells us what the weather is like. Okay, person who gives us the weather report. Now, if the meteorologist is going to be talking about rain, and in this case saying, well, there's an 80% chance, then you know that there's a very high chance that it's going to rain. If they said that there was a 20% chance that it was going to rain, then you would know that there's just a very small chance that it will. So it probably won't. Okay? So they're talking about the chance of rain, and when they're doing that, they're using percentages, the chance of rain, and they give that to us in percentages. Now, let's continue. It says we can also use a fraction to describe the likelihood of an event. When we use a fraction, we refer to the likelihood of the event as probability. For instance, if a coin is flipped, the probability that it will land heads up is 1/2. Okay, let's talk about that part for a minute. So when we're talking about the probability of something, we're going to give our answer in fractions. When we're talking about the chance, we give our answer in percentages. So as far as the coin is concerned, if you have a coin, you know one side is heads and the side that's not heads is referred to as tails. And when you flip the coin, okay, my coin landed on heads. So for that, we would say that the probability that it landed on heads is 1/2. Well, what does that mean? Well, the coin, in this case the quarter, the coin has two sides, a heads and a tails. So for either side, there's half probability that it's going to land on what you what you predicted it to, or what you called out. Is it going to be heads? Is it going to be tails? So in this case, it lands on heads, so the probability is 1/2 that it lands on heads. But the same thing is true about tails. So what's the probability it lands on tails? 1/2. Why? Because there's only two possibilities, and that's 1 out of 2. Whether it's heads, it's 1/2. Whether it's tails, it's 1/2. It's 1 out of 2. Again, when we do probability, we answer in terms of fractions. Okay, so anytime for both of these, whether we're using chance or probability, both of these are referring to the likelihood of an event happening. How likely is it to rain? How likely is my coin going to, that my coin will land on heads when I toss it up? Okay, it's the likelihood of an event happening. And again, when it's chance, when we're referring to it as chance, what is the chance of rain? Then we give our response in percentages. What is the probability that it will land on heads? We're going to use fractions. Now, you could also say for the coin, what is the chance that the coin will land on heads, or what is the chance that the coin will land on tails? And if you do that, then you're going to give your answer in percentages. So then what is the chance that it lands on heads? 50%. What's the chance that it can land on tails? 50%. So you can use, they're interchangeable whether, you say, what is the chance or what is the probability. But what you need to remember is that when you're asking for what is the chance, you have to respond in percentages. And when you're asking what is the probability, you have to respond in fractions. Okay, let's look down at the example. The first example at the bottom of the page says you have a number cube. Now, whenever they're talking about a number cube, they're simply just talking about a die. You need to remember that on the die, you have 6 sides, and therefore there are 6 numbers. You have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? You know that there are 6 numbers, 6 sides. Each side is represented by dots, different numbers. Now, it says when a number cube is rolled, what is the probability that the number rolled will be an even number? What is the probability that it will be an even number? Well, first of all, they're asking for probability, which means you need to give your answer as a fraction. So we're talking about a number cube. What is the probability that the number rolled will be an even number? First thing you need to know, I have to answer in a fraction because it's probability. The number cube has 6 sides, 6 possibilities of answers. So the 6 is the denominator because that's the total number of possible outcomes. And now your numerator is going to be the number that's going to answer this question. So what is the probability that you're going to roll an even number? Well, out of your numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 2 is even, 4 is even, 6 is even. So you have 3 even numbers. So you could say then that the probability of you rolling an even number on a number cube is going to be 3/6. However, you also need to be aware that this is a fraction that is equivalent to what? The numerator is half of the denominator. What is it equivalent to? Right, 1/2. And because it is equivalent to 1/2, we always have to write it in its lowest terms. Okay, so we would say 1/2. So the probability that you roll an even number on the number cube is 1/2. Why? Because there are 6 possibilities. 3 of those possibilities are even numbers, and 3/6 is equivalent or equal to 1/2. So the probability of rolling an even number on this number cube is 1/2. Now, if I was to take that same idea and ask you, well, what is the chance? What is the chance that we would roll an even number on this number cube? What is the chance? You would say 50%. Why? Because 100% would represent all of the numbers. Of those numbers, half of them are even, making it 50% because 1/2 is equal to 50%. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the practice. It says, what is the probability of a flipped coin landing tails up? Well, no different than in the introduction when it talked about the coin landing heads up. So if it lands on tails up, the probability is 1/2. So for our practice, A is 1/2. Again, it's asking about probability. Probability, you answer with a fraction. B, what is the probability? So again, we're still answering with fractions because it's asking about probability. What is the probability of rolling a square number with one roll of a number cube? What is the probability of rolling a square number? Okay, so our numbers on the number cube, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now you have to know which of those numbers are square numbers. Remember, a square number, when you have a number, you can multiply it by itself, and then it equals this number that we're looking at. So, for example, 1 we know is a square number. Why? Because 1 times itself equals 1. So the number 1 is square because we can say that one number times another number equals 1. In this case, it happens to be 1. Okay, what about 2? Well, in 2, the only factors for 2 would be 1 times 2 or 2 times 1. So 2 is not a square number because the factors need to be identical. What about 3? Factors that equal 3, 1 times 3, if you reverse it 3 times 1, they're not identical. What about 4? What are the factors that are equal to 4? 1 times 4, 4 times 1, but also what? 2 times 2. When your factors are identical, then the product is a square number. So 1 is a square number, 4 is a square number. What about 5? 1 times 5, 5 times 1. No. What about 6? 1 times 6, 6 times 1. Okay? Again, your square numbers are when you have two identical factors that equal that number. So for right now, I misplaced my eraser. Oh, here we are. So for right now, we know that on a regular number cube, the only square numbers are 1 and 4. So the question is, what is the probability of rolling a square number with one roll of a number cube? Well, it's 2, because there are 2 square numbers out of, and we said before, your number cube has 6 numbers. So it's 2 6. Your probability is 2 6. However, you should recognize that this is also a fraction that needs to be reduced. Remember, sometime not too long before spring break, when we were talking about fractions and looking at fractions, recognizing that we always need to check to make sure fractions have been reduced. So in this case, 2 6 needs to be reduced. And to reduce, you have to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same numbers. So in this case, we would divide both parts by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our probability of rolling a square number with a regular number cube would be 1/3. Because remember, probability, we answer in fractions. Okay, and then we have C. And C says, what is the probability of this spinner stopping on a 4? Okay, well, you have a spinner, they're showing you, it looks like this. Okay, and then they have the arrow. It doesn't really matter where it's pointing right now, but they're just saying, what is the probability, meaning you have to answer in fractions, what is the probability of this spinner stopping on the 4? Like anything else, when you're asked probability, you answer with the fraction. So first thing you have to do, what is the total number of outcomes you have here? There are only 4 numbers on this spinner, and there are 4 different numbers. So 4 is our total, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then how many of these numbers is actually a 4? Well, only one of them is a 4, so that means 1 out of 4 of the numbers. Okay, only 1 out of 4 of the numbers is the number they're looking at. So the probability of this spinner stopping on a 4 would be 1/4. Again, it's asking probability. Probability you have to answer with the fraction. You have 4 numbers, 4 sections on this spinner, and only one of them is a 4. Okay? So your probability then of its landing on a 4 would be 1/4. And then D says, the meteorologist said that the chance of rain is 50%. What does that forecast mean? Okay, this needs an explanation. This isn't a percentage answer. It's not a fraction. It is a written explanation because it's saying, what does that forecast mean? So the meteorologist says that the chance of rain is 50%. What does that mean? It's 50%. What they want you to do really is to interpret what a 50% chance of rain means. Okay, so what you need to recognize here is that if there's a 50% chance that it's going to rain, there's also then what? If you have a 50% chance that it will rain, what else do you have? Remember, 50 and 50 is 100. And when we're talking about percentages, percentages are based on 100. So if there's a 50% chance it will rain, then that means there's a 50% chance that it won't rain. So if the meteorologist forecast is that there's a 50% chance of rain, that means, well, there's 50% chance it will rain, 50% chance it won't rain, which basically means there's just equal chances. Okay, that there's an equal chance of rain or not rain. Okay, equal chance that there will be rain as there won't be rain. So if we were to get that, if we were to hear that as a forecast, we really wouldn't know what we should do. Should we be prepared or not prepared? Well, in this case, you better be prepared because you just don't know. There's an equal chance it will rain as there is it won't rain. So you could either have a wet rainy day or maybe it could be a dry sunny day. You don't know. Okay? Equal chance. So that's all they were really asking for indeed. They wanted you to sort of interpret what was meant then if the meteorologist said a 50% chance of rain. Okay, it just means that there are equal chances that it will rain or not rain. Okay? All right, so that's chance and probability. So today you'll be working on lesson 129, numbers 1 to 30. And you always know, you have any questions, you're not sure about something, you need help with anything, please make sure you reach out to me so that I can help you with that. Also, make sure you're putting in your time on IXL and Extra Math whenever you can. All right, have a good day. Talk to you later.